United States is going to come after you.
Wake Up Missouri with Stephanie Bell, the Zimmer News Team.
It just was the right time to do it. We had to do it because it's a war. We're losing 300,000 people a year.
And now introducing your host, Randy Tobler.
Can't just acknowledge that it's been a good thing what's happened. I mean, I've seen the speeches from whether it's Leader Schumer or kinds of past tweets from President Biden. You know, we all wanted this man gone, and now he is gone. I think we should really appreciate exactly what happened here.
Well, there's John Fetterman, who seems to be the lone Democrat who has some sensibility about what happened in Venezuela. And I know there's been a lot in the news cycle about that, but it continues to talk as Maduro and his wife were arraigned yesterday. And who better to talk about the defense matters going forward than Jennifer Bukowski and for Stephanie Bell. Hi, Jen.
Good morning, Randy.
And along with John Marsh and Drake Whitman, we are Wake Up Missouri. Glad that you're here. I for one, think that this is just devilishly fun to watch the Democrats squirm and equivocate. And, well, it's a good thing that it happened. But Trump did it, so it's no good. It's absolutely unjustified. But not a bad thing. It's a good thing that happened. I mean, I think this is just hilarious to watch them absolutely try to equivocate on this and somehow, like, threading the needle, rhetorically. And they look like fools. They just look like fools when you see what they had posted before.
Well, they had a $50 million bounty out for the guy. And now whatever Trump does is bad. They can't acknowledge anything good. This was, as Fetterman said, this was a precise strike. It was limited. We're not looking to occupy like we did in Iraq with thousands and thousands of boots on the ground. We got in, we got out. And that's the way to do it. And that's the way we eliminated the nuclear program for Iran. And look what's happening over there. It's like the bad guys of the world need to pay attention that this is a president of action. And so here we go. It's a whole new era. It's going to be a big 2026.
Well, it's funny. I wonder how, and many of you in Wake Up Land may be of the sentiment that this feels at least if not a mom or dad or a brother or sister to neoconservatism, it's probably an aunt or uncle or a cousin. And I'm all with it. I've always said, and I maintain that unless America is the big brother in the room, the policeman on the corner, the whole world just burns in corruption and anarchy and disaster for the people of the world. And so I frankly don't have any problem with it. I'm glad that we're not trying to do hey, we're going to turn you into a modern liberal democracy. I like that. Get in and get out. But it sends a message. It's like there's a sheriff in town. You're going to behave. There's going to be law and order. And that's the way it's going to be.
I'm more of let's not be war hawks. Let's not cause conflicts. Let's not be policemen of the world. Iraq was a mistake. President Trump thinks Iraq was a mistake. But when I hear that Iran is down there, that they have been for decades dealing with Hezbollah, sending drugs to Europe through Hezbollah, which is an Islamic terrorist group that attacks Americans, when they're dealing with the Russians, when they're dealing with the Chinese, and they have, a third of the oil reserves of the planet. Mm-hmm. They're in our hemisphere. We have a Monroe Doctrine for a reason, which I've just learned about. Now it's the Donroe Doctrine. This is important, and it is important to the safety of our country. Although I was unsettled, I was actually in the Bahamas when this went down.
Oh, really?
In a hot tub, looking up, seeing military planes in formation flying right over our heads.
Yeah.
And I look at my 18-year-old son. I'm like, are we at war? Like, what does this mean? But no, we got in, we got out. It doesn't look like anything that's going to result in a draft like World War II. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It could be preventing a World War III.
No, absolutely. I think that I don't have a concern that unless the other side, the bad boys, decided to foolishly try to somehow wage some kind of a kinetic action against the United States. Mm-hmm. I just don't see us getting into that. I mean, and I think we are in a way
because
policemen.
We're positioning ourselves to be strong.
Well, we are in a way policemen in the sense of, there's a skirmish going on there. People are getting caught. Innocent people. I think of the tragic shooting in June in Colombia where that poor young lady from Stevens College, was murdered as basically collateral damage in a street fight. And I think, it makes sense to me to us get in, get out. Look what he did in Syria after they messed with killed a couple of our soldiers. And if Bush would have done the similar kind of thing, get in, get out, take care of Saddam, let them take care of their people. He was throwing people off of buildings, for crying out loud. I'm okay with that. 573-874-9390. Let us know if you're okay with what's going on or not. You got it. No matter how you think about this, it is hilarious when you look at the clips of Schumer in the past saying, "Oh, look at Trump. What has he done about this?" And then now, "Oh, Trump did something. How that's against international law." And if you believe international law, and if you are into the United Nations sanctions, there are. I was sent a document by a good friend and a guy who knows an awful lot about the military from a very left-leaning group that analyzed this and said, well, according to the UN Charter, I mean, we actually did cause damage. Reportedly 40 civilians and military people in Venezuela killed.
I've heard
that's what they said.
I've heard different numbers on that. I heard 30 bodyguards. I heard 100 total. I can't seem to find a consistent number on that.
Yeah, the Cubans piped up that they said dozens of Cuban troops that were in Venezuela were killed. And it's like, okay, right. What are the Cubans doing in Venezuela?
Yeah,
that's right.
How many more are there alive?
Yeah.
You want to tell us that?
And that's like Hamas said that, tens of 100,000, Gazans had been killed. Where's the bodies in the streets? I'm sorry, I haven't seen that.
Although they've been careful to say 0 American casualties. Every time they say 0 casualties, they say American, which kind of implies some people died, which it would shock me. I mean, they did at one point say that one of our helicopters they did fire at, and they were met with overwhelming response.
Right.
And so that means we had overwhelming bullets coming back at them. So that implies to me that there were casualties as we went in.
Reminds me of shock and awe back in the day, right? I mean, that's...
I think Department of Defense did confirm that they had several, I think some of the, I don't know, it was TF-160 or the helicopter crews coming in, and I think some of them were treated at the base in San Diego, but I don't think anybody was killed. They had people who were wounded.
Yeah, the helicopter didn't even go all the way down, but it did get hit.
And notwithstanding Senator Mark Kelly's service to this country, both in the military and as an astronaut, I think what he did with this behavior, along with 3 or 4 other legislators, basically urging soldiers, military members, to disobey orders when it came into going into cities and National Guard and so forth.
That was weird. They were very unclear what they were asking them to disobey orders on. Was it the drug boat strikes? Was it going into cities? But they just released this bizarre, vague video saying, don't obey orders and commit seditious behavior.
Don't you think that between the lines, though, they were really sort of putting it all in a big basket, whether it was ICE as a not a military force, but an enforcement force, a law enforcement arm, anyone that's doing anything that Trump wants to do. Basically, the implicit message was, don't do it. And John, I don't know.
It was a threat, too. We might come after you later if you do obey orders that we don't agree with now. And so it could undermine a lot of things, and it wasn't a good thing to do.
Doesn't this remind you, though, I think this is a bit of a look into the character of many Democrats and many of these progressives and the people that rise to power positions within that party. It's like, we want Maduro gone. We're going to do a bounty. But you take care of it now. But we're going to take credit when it happens. And you in the military, we're just going to remind you that you don't have to obey those orders. And if you don't obey them, you could. We're not going to take care of the drug dealers. We're not going to clean up the crime in D.C. and Chicago and New Orleans and Portland. But if Trump does it, we're not going to disobey this. We're not going to impeach Trump. I just think this whole wanting other people to do their bidding is a cowardly thing. There's a bit of cowardice about the Democrats. Instead of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and getting in there and rooting out the crime, they want someone else to do their dirty work.
But did you know that Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona is a retired Navy captain who is still receiving a military pension. And apparently, according to Pete Hegseth, he's still accountable to military justice. And the Department of War and the American people expect justice, so they're going to do a review of his rank and his retirement pay based on this video that he released.
That's right.
And I think I just never knew that this is something that could take place. Like, if you could be, like, after you're out and you're retired, you're still subjected to, like, court-martial procedures. Did you know that?
Apparently,
I've never heard of this.
That is an option. I think, according to even several conservative scholars I've talked to, what happened was not seditious in the sense of the way it was originally intended. That's what Hegseth is maintaining, and we don't know. John, what do you and your military contacts say about whether this rose to the level of sedition? I mean, I think even conservative people that are sympathetic with what Trump was doing and with the narco boats and everything would say,
Well, remember when we talked to Colonel Steve Bucci, or basically our Zimmer radio military analyst, he said this was boot camp 101.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all about, these lawmakers being kind of heavy-handed and saying, oh, you military, you young junior enlisted out there, you shouldn't have to respond to, illegal orders. And he was like, well, no kidding. I mean,
right.
that's one of the very first things you learn in basic training.
Yeah, tell me something new.
Well, I wonder why the senator is going to potentially face sanction here, because they had flacking with CIA, but then the House reps, Jason Crow of Colorado, Maggie Goodlander of New Hampshire, and Chris DeLuzio and Chrissy Houlihan, both of Pennsylvania, also were Congress. They're in Congress, and they're also former Navy officers and a former Air Force officer. So why isn't he doing anything on them?
It's because Mark Kelly is a retired military officer, and these people who were, the rest of them presumably didn't serve 20 years, so they didn't retire from the military.
Okay.
They resigned their commissions.
Oh.
So they don't
he's
have
under a different
to sanction.
Yeah, they were not getting military retirement pay like Mark Kelly does, so he's still, subject to Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Well, have you seen this happen before, John? I can't remember a news cycle where something like this went on.
This was kind of out there, and I know, like Bucci said, he said this is just kind of boot camp 101. Yeah, we don't obey illegal orders. We don't need to be told that by this bunch of congressmen.
And during those narco boat actions, there's been all kinds of JAGs around, and they're always consulting with that. And you're told to do that apparently in the military. You run it up the flagpole before you do that, unless the flagpole is absolutely telling you to commit a war crime that everyone would look at, I guess. Well, there's lots going on. Senator Cindy O'Loughlin, one day ahead of the opening of the General Session, the General Assembly session, talks to us at 7:35, and then we're going to talk with the Minnesota RNC councilwoman or committee woman at 8:08 and talk to her about the graft and corruption, and that scandal just continues to expand. Lots going on, a busy Tuesday on Wake Up Missouri. Stay tuned. The D.C. Rundown coming up.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
stuff from the judge translated to him by an off-screen translator to ensure that he understood. He said he did. Interestingly, he said after the judge read him a version of Miranda rights and included the fact that he had the right to potentially be released on bail, Maduro said he was unaware of those rights, and it struck me that he's coming from a very different legal system.
There's Paul Morrow from Fox News. Here's John Marsh with the Daily DC Rundown.
Capture of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro was not just about drugs, Attorney General Pam Bondi said in her first interview about the military operation. Nothing is off the table, she told Sean Hannity. These people must remain behind bars. Maduro and his wife pleaded not guilty to narco-terrorism. Independent journalist Nick Shirley says he's now become a target from the political left for putting a spotlight on the frauds taking place in Minnesota. He says, let's tell everyone fraud is bad, let's crack down on the fraud, but he says the woke crowd is coming after the person who's exposing the fraud. And a man is now in custody after damaging property at Vice President J.D. Vance's home in Cincinnati, according to the Secret Service. Suspect identified as 26-year-old William DeFore faces charges of vandalism, obstruction of official business, criminal trespass, and more.
And goes by Julia.
Julia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does anyone get that close to the vice president's private residence?
Well, it's in Ohio. No one's there. They can't put, super guards on that to prevent someone from walking up with a hammer. They got him.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Don't you
think?
No
one was inside.
Wouldn't there be all kind of camera monitoring and everything?
Yeah, that's why you're going to get caught.
That's probably why they were able to do it.
Yeah, you would think, but who knows?
Yeah. I think it's crazy. Well, there was a big, we're going to, at 6:35, Brian Hauswirth is going to join us because one of the 3 shooting victims that happened in northeast Colombia was died and now faces second-degree murder charges. This happens at the same time that a pre-scheduled meeting between the governor and the mayor, city manager, and chief of police of Colombia met yesterday. So Brian will be reporting on that. I think we're seeing at the border, we're seeing with Donald Trump, the attempt to send a message to would-be bad guys and gals across the globe and across our nation that, hey, law and order matters. We're going to respect authority. If you're going to shoot them up and whatever, we're going to get at you. So I'm anxious to see what this latest round of violence in Colombia and the meetings with the governor and the ongoing sort of broken glass policy of the chief of police and the police department here, whether in the big picture that's really going to send messages and whether criminals really are deterred by these kind of messages. I don't know. You know more about this than I would. Well, you know about the mentality of a criminal.
I do know if consequences are quick and likely, you're less likely to take the risk.
Yeah. Well, my mom and dad taught me that a long time ago when I ate a bar of soap for a potty mouth word when I was a youngin'. Swift and severe and certain consequences back on that crime spree in Colombia.
Has America been
Well, crime doesn't just happen in Venezuela with narco trafficking. It happens right in a community near you. And if you live in Colombia, after sporadic outbursts of crime and gun violence and shootings and overall, I would think a lot of folks, since the policies that have been put into place by Chief Jill Schluty and the police department, I think most people would say they were hopeful that things were going to settle down a little bit, that violence was going to maybe take a little pause. And here over the weekend, we had a shooting at right in the middle of a major shopping area at Dick's, outside of Dick's Sporting Goods. And then a triple shooting in northwest Colombia, just north of sort of that quadrant northwest of 63 and 70. And one of the victims has died. And so Brian Hauswirth's been covering that. Brian, I thought after save for the shooting in June, where the tragic death of that woman who was innocent, just bystander, was murdered.
That was in September.
September,
exactly.
Sorry. September. That's right. We had a relative, I would say relative to compared to a year or two ago. It got the sense that murders and shootings were relatively down a little bit. At least that's the feeling I got. I don't know. And now it seems like it's ramping up again.
You know, Randy, to your point about that, we had, and Jen, good to see you as well, Counselor, but we had a lot of activity in the downtown area here and there. We had a double shooting downtown back in the April, and then the triple shooting in September. They beefed up it. It basically did a surge, and it almost eliminated the crime entirely. It kind of went away.
Neither of these things were downtown.
No, exactly. The one out at Dick's Sporting Goods was Saturday night, and that was a juvenile who we don't have any court documents on him. That will stay in the juvenile system for now.
Yeah.
And they could certify him. They may not. That'll be up to the court. So we don't.
So wait a minute. You're a, quote, juvenile, but you carjack and you shoot someone.
Shoot at someone.
Yes. Someone, but you're still protected.
Correct.
Wow.
So the Missourian today is saying that it was inside Dick's Sporting Goods, and
the police have not confirmed that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked, and the police have not. Now they may be talking to employees. It very well could have been inside and outside, but the shots could have been fired outside.
Never
too.
mind. It was just on this last weekend. We went to Trader Joe's, and we had lunch at that Chinese joint there, right there in that same plaza.
Yeah,
it's right there. And I looked at Helene. I went, "Holy cow!"
Randy and Jen, and I'm glad you brought. No, you're right. And I went to Mass Saturday night on my way to the Mizzou game, and drove right by that area, and it was packed. It was packed full of people. You're talking about Trader Joe's and stuff,
and Taste Place. Yeah,
I go that area all the time. Home Goods is over there.
Yeah, it's packed. So that we're focused on, and then the triple shooting happened at the Greens Apartments on Clark Lane. Randy and Jen, I've got the details up at 939theeagle.com and KWS.com as well. I just warn everyone that are interested in the details, and I know a lot of people are. The details are almost unspeakable, what's in these court documents. I mean, this one lady was essentially executed. She was shot multiple times. We have another one quoted in the court documents saying, "Officer, please help me. Please help me. I don't want to die." Someone else shot and stabbed. I'll spare you some of the details about the amount of blood at the apartment complex in this scene. But it is horrible. And then we have the video, and this is very important. I said this on my newscast yesterday. Chief Schluty was urging our listeners, if they had video footage from their doorbell cameras, to come to the police, let them know. Someone did. And it's in the court document. It says video footage from a neighboring apartment shows someone chasing another while shooting at him. And we don't have a mugshot of this suspect, but I can tell you from the Boone County Sheriff, this guy is 6'5", 325 pounds. That's what it says. It's in there. I haven't seen his picture yet because he may be in the hospital, but he's not in. For whatever reason, we don't have a picture. But he is a convicted felon by law. He should not have had a gun, and he allegedly had not just a gun, but a knife as well.
What do we know about his conviction, his prior?
He has let me pull my story up. He has now, some of these cases appear to have, he has a pending case out of Fulton earlier this year, but he does have convictions for various things, and I'll try to pull that up here in terms of...
Well, they're felonies.
They are felonies, exactly.
Okay.
Here they are. This is at 939theeagle.com. Felony possession of a controlled substance, municipal driving without a license, driving without a license. So also he allegedly drove to the murder scene without a license as well. I don't see any... Now, he's got some priors right now that appear to be pending in Callaway County, but he is a convicted felon, and he should not have had a gun under the law. He should not have had a gun under the law. And now he is quoted as saying, Randy, this is in the court docs, he took Xanax. He doesn't remember what happened. He says, I woke up in the street with blood on my hands.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Is what he's saying.
Yeah, that's what they all say. So, okay.
Well, did you take Xanax and drink alcohol or something?
Yeah,
Like, how much Xanax did you do that you don't remember anything?
I guess he, for all of you,
well, the thing is, legally,
medical...
if he is saying he willingly took that Xanax, that will not form a legal defense for him.
Thank you for saying that, because I'm confused. There's you hear in the news cycles
if you get a drug slipped to you that you're unbeknownst to you took,
but
that can be a legal defense. But if you voluntarily did, it's not a legal defense.
But what if you're addicted and it's an illness
and you're voluntarily taking it?
Yeah,
no, it's only when someone has slipped
you're
you.
You're a victim of your illness.
Well, it's only when someone has slipped you something that you can try to create a defense on that.
But won't someone try to say that? No, he's ill. He's mentally ill, and he has an addiction. He couldn't control his addiction, and that led to this, and therefore he's not responsible. It's pharma. Let's sue pharma. Let's bring them right into the courtroom.
Randy,
it's pharma's
you'll be glad to know you'd have to change the Missouri statutes to allow that defense. Like, I would have raised that defense in different cases I'd had if it were available. It is not.
To Jennifer's point about, and you guys are asking a very good question, because you know he's going to bring it up, and as a defense attorney will. Quote, this is at 939theeagle.com. I link to the court document. Quote, 2 sentences. During a post-Miranda interview, Caldwell stated he did not remember or know anything. Caldwell stated he took Xanax, and the next thing he knew, he was waking up in the street with blood on his hands. End of quote. So they don't say if it doesn't indicate it was slipped to him. It says
that's what I said. He said that he took it. That's really bad for his criminal defense attorney.
Yeah. Okay. Jen's right. Jen's
it gives him
correct on
less
that.
to work with.
And for listeners that don't know,
because it doesn't matter if you don't remember doing it, if you voluntarily took something that makes you black out a pill or something.
And Jennifer is one of the top defense attorneys in the state, certainly in mid-Missouri. She knows what she's talking about, and she's correct on that. But that is something, but these charges are unspeakable. The mayor and the city manager and the police chief did meet with Governor Kehoe yesterday in Jefferson City. They talked, it was a short meeting, my understanding, a closed meeting, media not allowed in. Well, a lot of times they don't have the media in on some of these meetings. But basically, it was a chance for Barb. And I think it's important to note, they set this up weeks ago, before this.
Yeah.
But Mayor Buffalo was on TV last night to our news partner, ABC 17, and talked about various things, but just wants the police chief to be able to present data to the governor.
Right.
She talked about common sense gun solutions, but she didn't go into many details. She talked about minor in possession, if you will, these guns. But remember, we have gun laws on the books right now. This guy legally shouldn't have had a gun, and he did.
And a lot of these, when we hear about the national mass shootings and so forth, a lot of the times these young people have often gotten their guns from their parents, right? And so there's a lack of oversight there. And I'm not saying that's what's here. The gun laws are there. Mm-hmm. The general cultural...
The criminals don't care if they are not supposed to be carrying a gun or driving a car.
And whether, look, and you talk about this...
If you're willing to shoot and murder people, you're willing to flout the felons can't carry guns and people without licenses can't drive.
And whether it's the Xanax or some other psychoactive substance, legal or illegal, look, at some point, I think Donald Trump's wise words to his children, he has been very overt about that. Look, don't touch alcohol because it can get you in trouble. And I think most of us have some version of that we've been taught by our parents or another authority figure. First, we're taught to respect authority, and then authority tells you to respect yourself and respect others and limit your abuse of these kind of things. These kids and these people that get involved in these things often don't have those kind of guardrails in their life. And when they do, we do have a mental health problem in this country. It needs to be addressed. There's no doubt about it. But at some point, we have to invoke personal responsibility when it gets to the point where you're doing this kind of carnage, right? It's terrible. Why? What is going on in that quadrant of our city? What is it? Is that a a drug hub?
There's certainly drugs. I live right across the street from this, full disclosure, right across the street from where the murder took place. Not directly, but I'm in the complex across the street. 17 had some really good numbers. I haven't used those because they're talking about the corridor, but it's a very high number of assaults, shots fired calls, shots fired incidents, police calls on Clark Lane. That I haven't used that because they're correct on it. The numbers are right, but it's basically the corridor between Paris Road and out to St. Charles. But in that area, we had a situation at the Links in June, what would have been June of 24, where a guy shot up the Bearcat for the police department. They had to bring the bomb squad out there.
Yeah.
We had a murder suspect who was captured at the Links that allegedly killed someone at the Lake of the Woods. We've had a shooting before at the Greens. It was about a year ago. I can't tell you what I'll leave that to the listeners and stuff, but it is rough. Somebody called me to made sure I was okay, and and said, we're hearing sirens. Folks, I hear sirens out there almost every night. The police are in that area almost every night, and if they're not, they're on I-70. That said, the mayor is correct about one thing she said on TV last night. She said it's happening. We have some of this all over town. Yes, it is on Clark Lane. I know, and I report on it.
Yeah.
But it also is at Dick's Sporting Goods. It's downtown. We've had it in South Columbia, too.
Mike Murphy, and I know you're busy doing reporting on this other thing. Mike Murphy communicates with us saying that Jill Schluty last night on Eagle Eye said that from her that 8 to 10 shots inside Dick's. Per Chief Schluty last night.
Oh, that's interesting.
On Eagle Eye.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to listen to that. I was busy in the office.
And I heard most. I didn't hear that.
But that's why everyone should stay tuned from dawn to dusk to 93.9 The Eagle, because while Brian's covering northeast, Mike Murphy's covering western Columbia. It's like we don't have John, can you come and recover the rest of maybe downtown Columbia? I don't know.
We can talk about Southwest Columbia. Brian knows. Brian's done the news stories on the recent incidents down in that part of Columbia as well.
Springfield had a shooting Friday night in a parking garage.
They did.
Really?
And, yes. And we have issues.
Wow.
But
Wow.
I think I do want to mention the overwhelming majority of people on Clark Lane, including the people at those complexes. Some of them work 2 or 3 jobs, and some don't have vehicles. There are a lot of hardworking people. It's just, unfortunately, it's horrific.
Are we seeing more patrols in the area?
Yes.
Okay, good.
For sure.
That's important. Thanks for that reporting.
Police are in my complex every day driving around.
We're sorry to hear about that loss of life and the carnage that goes on. Yeah. I think Brian better start open carrying. I don't know.
Or moving.
Thanks for that reporting, Brian. All right. Wow, back with Make Missouri Healthy again. Some new vaccine recommendations by the CDC. Stay tuned.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
Under the direction of RFK Jr., HHS through the CDC has come out with, let's just say, a loosening of the recommendations for universal vaccinations. Now, they still recommend universal vaccinations, and I think this gives a really high measure of credibility to these recommendations, because it's not as though, I think as RFK is often charged with, well, vaccines are bad, eliminate them all. That's not what has come out of this analysis of basically an analysis of what is the risk of your child dying from or having some severe grave consequence from disease A, B, C, D versus, the risk potentially of the vaccine. And some of these risks of the vaccine are, let's say, either inadequately or poorly defined. Others are fairly well defined. And, the public health officials make a decision. And in some cases, well, if there's 2 to 3 deaths before the vaccine of question came out annually in America, and there may be some risks associated with it, even if it's just a near-term risk with having a fever, having the pain involved with it, and so forth. Then they may say, "Hey, look, have a discussion with your doctor."
Yeah. So now they're going from 80 doses per child to 10 plus the varicella vaccine, and that's they consider things from all the 20 nations around the world and all these different studies and making these new updated recommendations. You can still get all the other ones if you want them. They'll still be covered by insurance if they were already.
So this gives parents more flexibility. Yeah. Not that you didn't have that before. I mean, you could still say I have a religious objection to it, or some other philosophical
but unless you
objection.
said that, you can't send them to school.
Right, but you
without
can,
all of these shots.
You can opt out, at least in Missouri, and in most states you can opt out. But supporters of this say that the over-vaccination aligns with other countries, and since there are potential unknown risks, which I think are probably, it's fair to say, overplayed by RFK, they still exist. And there are those stories anecdotally of a child getting a vaccine and then, sometime later having a problem which is alleged to be a result of that vaccine. Bottom line is, what remains in the universal vaccination schedule is about 7 of them. That's the Tdap, which is recommended for pregnant women in their roughly 32 weeks. Polio, I think everyone would agree. We don't want polio to come back and be a scourge on our country. Measles, mumps, rubella, that's interesting there, because that's one that was thought, and I think RFK was part of the contingent that was, sort of hinting at and suggesting that MMR vaccine, the measles, mumps, rubella, caused autism. There's no solid evidence of that at all. Varicella, the chickenpox vaccine, type B Haemophilus influenza, and pneumococcal disease, which can be a devastating disease for kids. And then HPV, they're recommending 1 rather than 2 doses, and that normally is between kids age 9 and 11, to help prevent cervical cancer in women and venereal warts in both of them, sexually transmitted warts. What are now sort of they're optional, they still should and will be covered by insurance, are hepatitis A and B. That was the most controversial, was the hepatitis B, right, in the delivery room almost. It's like right away. And people are saying, look, unless you're in a high-risk group, or maybe you live in an area, or you're subjected part of
your mom's a prostitute.
Some of your family members are, involved in high-risk behaviors that could result in them acquiring and then transmitting hepatitis B. You may not want to get that. Rotavirus, that causes terrible diarrhea, some hospitalizations, but not many deaths.
But they pared it down.
What did he say about COVID?
Yeah, no, COVID
Deputy
is on the
Secretary.
optional list.
Yep.
On the optional list, yeah. So, and the RSV vaccine, interesting, is on the optional list. Now, if a kid has a respiratory illness, has cystic fibrosis, for instance, you'd want to get that kid vaccinated. But I think it's more sensible. I'm glad it's there.
In fact, I'll be introducing some legislation to make it easier to denaturalize individuals who've committed this kind of fraud in our country. We need to go after this fraud. We need to have more tools to make sure this kind of fraud doesn't happen. But it's a really stunning development. I think it also tells you, Harris, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the Somali-based fraud that had to do with these daycare centers. There's also a bunch of money that went out the door at the end of the Biden administration that had nothing to do with COVID, but it was under the auspices of these COVID funds. I think you're going to see another wave of fraud. So,
well, that's Eric Schmidt on with Harris Faulkner on Fox News yesterday. Welcome into Wake Up Missouri as we continue to see this expanding. I just think of like when you go to the theaters and, you know, sometimes John and Jennifer Bukowski in for Stephanie Bell, you know how they put the little smoke that goes out across the stage and it just keeps expanding. That's the way this fraud thing is. I mean, it starts with the food thing in Minnesota. Then it's the daycare centers. Then it's the home health care facilities. Then we hear about it in pockets of Ohio. And now I think there's a trial going on. Washington State. Then there's a trial in Mississippi for TANF things, aid to families, you know. It's expanding everywhere. And I think Americans, especially in this now, we're in a new year and the tax season is upon us. Everyone's thinking about gathering up that shoebox of receipts and getting them to the accountant. And, oh, my gosh, is this a deduction? Can I take that? What about this? Am I going to get a return? No tax on tips. I'm a senior, no tax. People are, wait a minute. I'm worried about my 1040 and paying my taxes, and yet that's going to this kind of graft and corruption and fraud across the nation. I think people are really giving themselves a wake-up call to go, wait a minute, what have we gotten to in this country where there is such a fertile seedbed for fraud?
Yeah, and I wonder, that was news that he broke yesterday, that he's considering legislation that would make a denaturalization process for people who commit these kind of crimes in our country. I wonder how many of the Somalis, I know it was the vast majority of people charged in the Minnesota fraud case, for example, that were Somalis, but I'm having trouble finding information about how many were American-born, because now that, you know, they've started coming since the early 90s, a lot of people up there are American citizens born in America, so you can't denaturalize them. But I think that could be a deterrent, but also could it be abused? I don't know. I want to see more details on this plan of his, but it's also interesting that he thinks a new wave is coming with the COVID relief.
I just want to remind people how much fraud. Well, I've heard numbers between $200 and $350 billion in fraud. And John, didn't we have at least one, if not two or three cases? I remember one in mid-Missouri. It was in the Jefferson City. Remember, there was a big chase with FBI agents and everything about a guy that had claimed he had stolen Social Security numbers and claimed he had 60 or 70 or 100 employees. And, you know, that kind of a mechanism was employed by a lot of people to get this payroll protection program, the PPP money. And then there was additional other kinds of money that businesses could get. And people were just fraudulently.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
you had prisoners in prison somehow getting PPP relief. I'm pretty sure they weren't like producing jobs right then. Oh my gosh!
And I know when I was running the hospital up in Scotland County, we stayed up late hours. We were 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night trying to figure out how we could compliantly, because we were affected by it tremendously when they basically shut down the ORs and healthcare was, except for emergency room, pretty much shut down. And we were trying to figure out how to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and being very careful about compliance. The banks that were administering these programs were very careful about that. But still, I guess there's ways that you can slip through under the cracks. You know?
Oh, yeah. That was a guy in Jefferson City, I remember at the time. He got popped for like $26 million in fraudulent bank cases.
That's the one,
that dealt with it. I think his name was Kyle Holtz, and ended up getting 10 or 12 years in federal penitentiary with it. But yeah, it was pretty widespread. And I mean, 26 million.
And I just want to ask,
Somali type money right there.
Why just 12? I want to ask, why just 12? Why isn't the penalty for something like that much more severe? Why just 12?
Good point.
I mean,
if it's just money. And they got the money back.
Well, but I'm sorry. I mean, I think you talked about it earlier with the message that Donald Trump is sending to China and Russia and Cuba. in terms of their influence in the Western Hemisphere and, in Venezuela in particular. But, they're talking now about from the administration about Colombia better watch out. This guy, that guy ought to better watch. Mexico better watch out. There is a deterrence factor. I mean, if it's done right, if it's done severe, if it's done swiftly so that you connect the crime with the punishment, would-be criminals, the public knows that. There's a general awareness that, as Pete Hegg said, mess around and find out.
Yeah,
he didn't
but there's
say
diminishing
mess.
returns in keeping someone like that in prison longer than 12 years. If it's a white-collar crime, no history, he's getting older. Is he really going to repeat it again if you let him out right away and steal $26 million more dollars? Should we keep paying to keep him in there? I mean, not everyone should go to prison the rest of their life for committing a crime. That's why we have ranges of punishment and ranges of offenses.
Well, in federal cases, as you know, a lot of times this guy, as I recall, had a 12-year sentence without any parole to boot.
Yeah, so 12 means 12. I mean, you get 11 months off that or something maybe where you're supervised. Yeah.
Yeah, Todd Keiholtz. Is that who you're referring to as Tanner?
That was the name.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
PPP loans was the vast majority of it. And
our
aggravated, identity theft, I think, was part of it, as I remember.
Someone texted that he was the previous owner of my house. That's it.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
Was it a post-pandemic house? Was it like a multi-million-dollar house he bought? Oh, boy.
That's interesting. Well, I think
he had 4 businesses. I think he was mainly a contractor.
Yeah. Donovan, when it comes to the Venezuelan thing, says if it benefits both the United States and Venezuela people, then great. Go grab some more criminal dictators if it helps people on both sides. I am not an isolationist by any stretch of the imagination, and I think that sometimes.
Well, we know that, Randy.
But I think in response to what was an overreach in Afghanistan and in Iraq, I think sometimes the pendulum might be begged to be swinging to too far the other side, where we just not going to do anything. Just wait until the missiles are coming across the New York harbor, and then we hope that our anti-missile systems will take them out. Yeah. I'm not in that camp either.
Well,
but there
like
are
we
people.
said on the break, this Venezuela thing had a lot to do with China. And part of my objection to Iraq and spending all our blood and treasure in places like that was we're weakening ourselves when we have a bigger threat on the horizon, which is China. So the fact that the Venezuela action was motivated by China makes it much more palatable to me.
Yeah. We have a lot of incoming on when we talked last hour about this shooting, a carjacking that resulted in, according to Chief Jill Schluty on Eagle Eye at 5 with Mike Murphy last night. Mike said that there were multiple shots per Chief Schluty inside Dick's. And some people are taken to task, reporters on TV saying they called this kid a boy. And, you carjack and you're brandishing a gun and shooting it inside a sporting goods store. Should you be treated as a juvenile? I mean, maybe it's time to do a little real growing up, courtesy of the justice system.
They do. They certify them as adults, especially if it's a 17-year-old. So it's not a girl. I was confused by that text. I'm like, are they saying it was a girl that did that? No, they're saying call him a man. Is that what you're getting out of that text?
Yeah. I don't know. I just think
was it a male or a female?
How many of us spend time over there? I mean, if you're in the mid-Missouri area at all, you go over to that area where the mall is and you hang out and shop.
And it's fine. We have one incident. Let's not overreact.
We've had other incidents there. There's been other incidents there just recently. I forget the specifics on it, but there was one. I think it was over maybe a little bit north, but still in that big complex. Where are these kids' authority figures? Where are these kids' parents? Where are the principals? Where are the counselors? Where are the teachers? Oh, they're not allowed to be in the school. They've got to pat them on the head and say, we understand you had trauma. Well, maybe it's time to turn it around and say you had trauma, but that's not an excuse to inflict trauma on others. We're going to address that.
Turn that around the whole time.
We're going to address that, but we're not going to excuse away your delinquent behavior. And it needs to start earlier. This is where I hope that Chief Schluty's efforts.
If past trauma were a legal defense to anything, Randy, trust me, no one would be held accountable for anything. That's why I'm against all these people that laugh about getting whoopings, big whoopings on their kids and stuff, because that perpetuates a cycle of like violence is a response to conflict. And past trauma engenders future trauma, but it's not a defense. It doesn't get you out of a jam.
No, wait a minute now.
It just makes you more likely to perpetrate.
We had an interesting discussion about corporal punishment with my children, my adult children.
Well, were you whipping them with electric cords and stuff?
Well, no. We occasionally would a little rap on the butt if it was appropriate. That's what they deserve. But we told them you're going to get wrapped on the butt if you don't behave. And now there's a lot of the psychological community that thinks that any time you lay a hand on a child, that is abuse. That's child abuse. 573-874-9390. Weigh in on it. Drake, what say you?
I mean, I think this kid that shot the person at Dick's needs a couple more spankings in his childhood. That's what I say. I'm with you.
Did you get a spanking in your childhood?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No one was shot at Dick's.
I'm not going out at Dick's Sporting Goods and carjacking and shooting a gun. Don't tell me that a spanking leads to that kind of behavior. You believe that, Jen?
No, I think it leads to more violent behavior, though.
573-874-9390.
It does. I've seen it. Trust me.
I know. As my dad would say, I'll give you trauma. I don't know. I mean, it's not a laughing matter. It isn't. But there's something, I guess maybe the corporal punishment has to be connected with tough love in other ways, right? Love, but with toughness. And part of that toughness can, in the appropriate setting, be corporal punishment.
But not all these people have the capabilities to know appropriate settings and appropriate levels when it comes to that stuff. And I don't like the jokes about whoopings and, especially in the black culture. They think it's so funny, but it leads to heartbreaking results.
The ultimate irony, Dick's Sporting Goods getting shot up years after they quit selling firearms. Go figure.
Yeah, that is ironic.
Yeah, that is ironic. You listen to Wake Up Missouri. Weigh in on these very weighty matters, will you? 573-874-9390. Be back.
It's Wake Up
Greenland is off the table.
It wouldn't be military action against Greenland. The Greenland has a population of 30,000 people, Jake. The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? What is their basis of having Greenland as a colony of Denmark? The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the United States.
Well, there you go. Stephen Miller arguing the case that President Trump is echoing too when he gaggles on Air Force One. He said it back in 2019. He believes we have a strategic interest in establishing Greenland as part of the United States.
And you know
Jennifer?
what? Greenland is geographically part of North America, sitting on the North American tectonic plate. So this is consistent with the Monroe Doctrine. On the other hand, we did promise with the Monroe Doctrine that we wouldn't interfere with European affairs, and Greenland's kind of in between. But technically, it's North America, so this would be Monroe Doctrine. And Stephen Miller is right. Like, by what right are they exerting control over this huge landmass with 30,000 people on it? We're the major power securing freedom in the Western Hemisphere. Why should it be Greenland's and not ours? Why should we have to ask them if we want to put military bases on that chunk of ice or not?
By what right, just to play devil's advocate, by what right do European colonizers hold a right to America?
Might. That's what.
Well,
that's
okay,
how we
so
could
but
take
I thought
Greenland
you were
too.
a non-interventionist. I thought we're not supposed to get involved in other people's affairs. You don't want to be a neocon, but it's okay when it comes to Greenland.
I'm just concerned about China. That's what I'm concerned about. China is a threat. China's
we've had bases. Yeah, we've had bases in Greenland.
Yeah, we do.
I had a friend back in the day. It's been a number of years, who was stationed at Thule Air Base in Greenland, which had a big U.S. presence. So the whole thing of taking over Greenland may be ill-advised, but putting bases there, I think we've got quite the history for it.
Well, and we also, there's so many tentacles that China has in both economic ways as well as, military ways. They're building artificial bases and islands in the South China Sea, for crying out loud. They own, a Hong Kong concern owns the Panama Canal, and now China is putting its foot down on a proposed sale to a consortium that's Western-based. You also have the concern about these rare earth minerals. It's a strategic hotspot in Greenland and in the Arctic, beyond, for that matter. China currently dominates production, about 80 to 90% of the world's supply. They have planted their flags on a lot of these deposits of these areas. So it's become a prime focus on many, many levels, not only strategically to defend Europe and the West, but now also in terms of resources that are going to be required as the AI revolution, the tech revolution, and all that's required just hardware-wise to drive that requires all of these minerals, half of the names you can't pronounce, right? So
well, and they're changing them. So, yeah, it used to be Thule Air Base, and now it's Pitufik Space Base.
Yeah, is that what it's called now?
This is 2023. They renamed it in honor of its Greenlandic heritage.
Apparently,
Space Force, I think, has a presence there.
Yeah, Space Base, they're calling it. That's cool.
Oh, man, I should have been a New Year's resolution. Space Force needs a new anthem. Every year on, Veterans Day, we play the Space Force anthem. It's a disaster. Maybe we can fix that this year.
Let's fix Missouri's flag first.
Oh, it's terrible. It sounds like something out of the 50s. I don't know, for crying out loud. Cindy O'Loughlin, when we come back, what's up in the General Assembly that starts tomorrow? Welcome back into Wake Up Missouri as we talk with Senate President Pro Tem Cindy O'Loughlin ahead of tomorrow's opening of the General Assembly here in Missouri. And again, I guess everyone's, Cindy, eating their Wheaties and getting ready for some Titan battles. That seems to be the way it is every year these days. Welcome in.
Thank you. It does seem to be the environment we have.
Yeah. What are your goals, this being your last session as the leader of the Senate? What kind of aspirations do you have? What kind of things are going to be top of the agenda for Cindy O'Loughlin?
Well, as you know, last year we had quite a few battles, and we ended up passing things that I felt we needed to pass. But, of course, it created a little dissension within the Senate body, so I'd like to, reach across the aisle again, talk with the Democrats. Usually there's a way forward on many of the issues. You just have to be willing to sit down and talk it through and find that path. Really, the voters, the tax-paying citizens, they don't benefit from constant fighting and never coming to a conclusion. So, I'd like for the atmosphere to be a little more collegial and try to work with the other side. That would be one thing. And really the biggest thing this year is we would like to implement and are going to implement priority-based budgeting.
What is that? Let's talk about that. How is that defined?
Well, what we currently have, I kind of define what we currently have is kind of an autopilot spending, even though the Appropriations Committee goes over all of the spending. The House side goes over it. The governor's office goes over it. But we have right now unsustainable budget growth, and I think we need to put an end to that. And the way things are measured for performance and outcomes is not a method that is clearly understandable. And though I hate to bring up AI, now that we have the AI tool, we can take massive amounts of information and input that and have a performance measurement that we can use. So if a department comes in with a new decision item, we can look at how did that perform last year? What are the things that you're suggesting this year? How do these measure up to what the governor's priorities are? Are the taxpayers being well served by the way we're spending the money? And it will give us a lot more clear information that we can make decisions with.
That's great. Senator O'Loughlin, show me results. I like seeing the government paying attention to that as they use our tax dollars. And one thing, go ahead.
Well, it's always bothered me. I know how we go about making a budget in the private world, and our expectation is that we will have a positive result. And if we don't, we make an immediate change, and government spending is so different from that. It's just, there needs to be a clear set of priorities, and there needs to be a measurement of what we're achieving, and departments need to be accountable for what they're spending.
That's Senator Cindy O'Loughlin. She joins us. I'm Randy Tobler, along with Jennifer Bukowski, in for Stephanie Bell and John Marsh here on Wake Up Missouri.
Senator, 3-word question. Democrats, filibuster, PQ. What happens this year?
Well, I've met with some of the Democrats and talked through kind of the things that we had come up last year. And one of the points I've made is both sides of the aisle are really about 50% responsible for a clear path forward. So, last year I feel that we had some things that we had tried to pass ever since I've gotten here and never were able to get those done, largely because of dysfunction on our own side of the aisle. And last year was different. We have a new leadership team, or we had Tony Lukemeyer and myself, and we worked really hard to bring everyone together. And so, in talking to the other side of the aisle, I'm like, look, we have 24 people and you have 10. And we have 24 people, I'm assuming, because our values and goals align with the majority of Missouri's voters. So if there's a way we can work through this, let's try and find that way. But we have the votes to pass this. And, ultimately, if you don't sit down, then you're responsible, too, for the end result. So I don't think anyone's dying to use that method again. But the PQ is just an offset to the filibuster. So if you abuse the filibuster privilege and you go on and on and on and try to employ it at every turn, eventually people are going to say, well, we have a tool to stop that, and if you won't stop it, then we'll have to use that tool.
Let's
we try to find a way to not do that.
For those who may not be in the weeds as much as all of us are most of the session, PQ is the previous question, and that basically puts an end to a filibuster and a debate and brings up a vote on the real content of the matter.
Senator, you're talking about using AI, which is exciting to look at departments and results. And one thing that Missouri is not seeing very good results in is we have a reading crisis. I'm on the board of directors of the Show Me Institute, and we were talking about this at our last meeting. 42% of fourth graders can barely read. But Mississippi, of all places, has performed this miracle where they've put these literacy tools into action and had incredible results. There's a bill pending, 1442, I think, Senate bill, that would do that in Missouri. Is that on your agenda this session?
Absolutely.
Good. That's so huge for the future of our kids. And go ahead.
It is. I mean, education is the foundation of our society. And if we want to have a strong society and a small government, then we enable young people to grow up and have the skills they need to function in society. And if you can't read, all of that goes out the window. And I've said repeatedly, stable families are what determine your state's success. If you don't have stable families, and if the children are illiterate, they're not employable. The next thing you know, crime is exploding, and this is kind of where we're at in the cities, and even in the rural areas. The methods used to teach reading were not good, and a couple of years ago, we passed a bill saying this is how you will teach reading, and unfortunately, some of the schools just aren't doing it. So, we recently had a hearing and we talked about this issue. So, yes, it is on my radar. I think it's just critically important.
Good. I'm so pleased to hear that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator, we had Nick Schroer on with us the other day and asked him about the status of the personal property tax, something your old buddy Bill Eigel liked to bring up every session. What's going to happen with that one this year? Do you see if that'll get much traction?
Our buddy Bill Eigel.
Instead of BBF, it's BFE or whatever you call it. Well, we'll certainly have a lot of discussions about it. And here's the reality. The personal property tax is being used to fund just about everything in the rural areas. If you go to the suburban areas where there's lots of businesses, lots of sales tax, it's not such a necessity. So any solution to cutting that, and I'm all for that, the solution has to take in the entire picture. So, really the question is, if you're going to cut this in the rural areas, what is it that you want to do without, or how do we fund that alternatively? And that's a pretty complicated question.
Yeah.
I do think we'll have a pretty strong focus on Jackson County because of all the counties, I think they're number one in terms of outright robbery almost. And Senator Nicola has a bill regarding that, and I think there'll be a lot of discussion about that.
Well, the big question that looms in many of our minds, under the cover of holiday slow news cycle, Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick releases a report that says unless we change our spending habits, that's how we started this conversation today, with your priority-based budgeting, by mid-2028, there could be a fiscal cliff where the reserves that were built up largely thanks to, largesse from the federal government and COVID-19 funds, those are going to be exhausted. And then there's a real problem. I'm certain you and others don't want to have that as your legacy, right? So that's a big deal. And how does that fit into the governor's plans to cut the income tax to zero?
Well, I mean, the reality is if, first of all, the voters would have to approve cutting the income tax, and there would have to be a plan for either cutting services or incrementally adding to a sales tax or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's what's done in other states. I think that he'll address that in his State of the State speech, and I'm certain that he has spent a lot of time figuring out how to best implement that. So we'll have to wait for those details, but, you make a valid point. Sometimes in politics, people just tell you what you want to hear. And I'm not guilty of that, which is probably why I'm unpopular with some people. But I think people are smart enough to realize that if you're going to cut a source of income, then that also means you're cutting something that you're paying for with that income.
Yeah.
And I think people deserve a clear picture of what that will look like. And I'm certain they'll be given that picture.
Common sense and straight talk from Senate President Pro Tem Cindy O'Loughlin, ready to lead the charge up the hill starting tomorrow as the session opens. We look forward to you. We pray for your success and Godspeed in this session. It's going to be wild and woolly. Hope you'll stay in touch with us throughout as things move forward.
Well, you have my cell phone, so.
We will. Thank you very, very much, Senator.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Coming up, John, what's happening?
What does your vanity tag on the car say about you?
Oh, that'll be fun. Talk about that in 5 on Wake Up Missouri.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
Tags were obscene or inflammatory. Illinois Secretary of State Alexei Giannoulis created a YouTube video in which he read off some of his favorites, including IBPOOPN, IB poopin'.
Oh, no.
SND, send nudes. BDAS, mom, badass mom. And ICUP.
Oh, no.
Now, well, Giannoulis and his staff say they appreciate the creativity of the state's drivers. He advises to keep it clean and avoid ending up on the naughty list. Some others, he said, there weren't so bad. I am Groot. Guardians of the Galaxy.
I love that. I am Groot.
Why you crying?
Oh, wow.
AZU wish, as you wish.
Mm-hmm.
And one that I saw once in Missouri a number of years ago. It was a car. It had an American Optometric Association bumper sticker on it, and the vanity tag said 4 IZE. Four eyes.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
For the eye doc.
I think some of those are pretty ingenious. They're pretty creative. It's fun to see some of those.
I wonder if anyone's gotten 6'7", 6'7".
Oh, I'm surprised we haven't seen that.
Well, 67 is a 2-digit one, so that's probably not available. But you could probably get 67, 67, 67.
Or you could do like SIX 7, SIX, something like that.
Oh,
maybe, yeah.
SIX,
Had a friend of mine's daughter who used to have that role at the Department of Revenue.
Oh, wow.
Division of Motor Vehicles. My buddy and I would call her up and say, hey, what about this one? She finally got to the point she said, stop calling me at work.
Do you still have her number? I want to inquire about 67.
She's no longer with Revenue.
Bummer.
I know that for a fact.
Is there a single person that adjudicates those requests as to
it was at the time,
that was her.
Some pretty good, pretty good guidelines.
Wow. And I wonder what the regulatory or statutory, it's like, who determines what's beyond the guardrails, right? I mean,
well, and you've got the smart Alex out there, who do the double entendre stuff and slip it by them. I mean, that's what a lot of them try for.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
I remember I saw one in town one time in Jefferson City, and it was a older nondescript car, and the vanity tag said WINO. Wino.
Oh.
Well, I'm just bummed that they refused my send nudes license plate request. I really wanted everyone to send me their pics.
Oh, well. Drake tried that. He already tried it. It didn't work.
Yeah, they suspended my license after I drove it around town.
You and Anthony Weiner, you wanted to have that one. Hey, has anyone, this was the go see movies season. A lot of people watch movies during the holidays. Has anyone seen Naked Gun? The remake with Liam Neeson. We watched that the other day.
Was it pretty good?
It was hilarious. Now, it's really for I don't know. I mean, I was of the Austin Powers genre, my
Leslie Nielsen back in the day.
And then before that, the original Naked Gun with Leslie Nielsen. But you talk about double entendres and just stupid slapstick humor. It is a fun one if you just want to take a break from high drama and gratuitous, blood all over the screen. Which once in a while, I like some of those revenge Gerard Butler movies. Like, yeah, that's good. I like that. But you get tired of that. If you haven't seen it, take a look at Liam Neeson in Naked Gun, the remake. It's on is it Netflix or Prime? I forget where we watched it, but it's fun. Oh, no, Frank's saying there's a proctologist license plate. I'm not going to go there. Coming up, we talk to a Minnesota RNC GOP committee woman about the carnage and up there. Stay tuned.
building right here. So this building alone made $2.6 million. Let's see if anybody's inside. Now we're inside of the building where there's apparently 4 childcare centers. We met this lady and we followed her to the back of the building where the daycare was supposedly at. So right here we have 2 child daycare centers. We have the Minnesota Child Care Center, and then we also have Nuna between.
Well, that's just a little bit of one of the many viral videos that have launched a large nationwide discussion and led to so much frustration on the part of law-abiding Minnesotans and Americans to say, what in the heck is going on? Just a little bit from Nick Shirley and his buddy Dave as they expose what's going on in Minnesota. Proud to introduce to you Emily Novotny Chance. She's the Republican representative of the Republican National Committee from Minnesota, and she joins us now on Wake Up Missouri. And Emily, thank you for being with us. Boy, what a bombshell of a story that just keeps growing and growing, sadly. Nothing new to you Minnesotans, or is this something that's really a revelation?
Thanks for having me. Good morning. This is nothing new at all. We had a DHS whistleblower in Minnesota calling out this fraud back in 2018. Republicans were calling it out in committee back in 2019. So this is nothing new to us in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Well, why was it allowed to go on? Was it just willful blindness or complacency, or were Democrats in charge getting in on the action? Like, what's your thought? What are your theories or thoughts on that?
I think it's all of the above option. I don't think it's one person turning a blind eye or one person being complicit. I think everybody was involved in the Democratic apparatus in Minnesota. And the only time that we really started to be able to dig in is when Republicans got gavels in the Minnesota House this last session in front of the Fraud Committee, and were able to start publicly uncovering what we've known about for so long. And it feels like an iceberg where you can just see the tip, and there is so much under the surface that we are continuing to uncover every single day. Well, and it's in so many of these social service programs, right? It started out with the food program, Food for Poor Folks, and then, of course, the daycare, and then it's these home health care facilities, and it just seems to be never ending across all of the social service spectrum. And I guess it raises the larger question, as a young and upcoming Republican, you were head of the South Dakota College Republicans, and now the representative for the Minnesota State Committee woman, RNC. At the RNC. What does this say about the difference between folks that want limited government, where government isn't the answer to everyone's need, versus those who, even Tim Walz said it yesterday in his resignation, or in his announcement he's not going to run again. Another program, I'm going to make these programs go. He just seems to be blind to the reality. I think this fraud is reaching past and through party lines. It's no longer just a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's a Minnesotan issue. Looking at where does your taxpayer money go? $9 billion in fraud, and we are not done uncovering it. How can anyone want to raise a family here, buy a home here, build a business here, when this is where your money is going? Yeah, and why should you drive to work? Why didn't you just get millions of dollars for daycare with no kids? Why don't I open up a daycare with nobody at it? Well, it must be extra painful for young people who clearly are struggling to pay their rent or buy a house. God forbid you try to think about a down payment and paying the high interest rates on high prices on homes. And then this on top of it, it's just rubbing salt into an already difficult economic time for a lot of young folks. Exactly. And what's crazy is blowing money in Minnesota isn't new. The Democrats blew an $18 billion surplus just 2 years ago. So you're looking at almost $30 billion in money that's just been flushed down the toilet that there's no accountability for, nothing we can show. It's not like we have the top-ranked schools in the nation. Under Governor Walz, our public schools have gone downhill fast. There's nothing we can show for this. And well, Governor Walz is no longer running for a third term. What are the Republicans' chances of flipping the governor's mansion in your state? Yeah, I've been saying for a few weeks now that they were going to Joe Biden Tim Walz and swap them out. I don't think this is a surprise for people on the ground when you have a Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party that is largely controlled by Ken Martin on the national level and Amy Klobuchar, our U.S. Senator. And
I think Republicans just have to keep focusing on the fact that it wasn't just Tim Walz that was complicit in this fraud, that this is a wide-scale issue that has plagued the Democratic Party in Minnesota for years, and that anyone that they swap in is just going to continue the same status quo.
We're talking with Emily Novotny Chance, and she is the committee woman from Minnesota, who is the national representative at the RNC, at the big boy table, right? The big boy and girl table, the adult table. So let me ask you this. There hasn't been much said about what was reported early on as this thing was mushrooming, about whistleblowers that were allegedly retaliated against by the Walz administration. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there is a large X account of DHS staffers that are reporting things privately, but back in 2018 was when the first whistleblower came out, and anyone who comes out is getting fired, doxxed, harassed at home, their families. So it's a really intimidating time to be a state government employee if you're someone that wants to call out these insane things that are happening. And in 2018, the whistleblower was just pointing out, it feels crazy to say just, but $100 million in fraud. So imagine what would have happened if someone would have listened back then.
Yeah. Well, do you suspect that there'll be a taxpayer revolt in one way or another, either at the ballot box or in some other way in Minnesota? And is there a chance that could respond or could expand in all the right ways across the fruited plains?
You're seeing that, and you've been seeing that in Minnesota. A lot of our Fortune 500 companies are fleeing the state, or they're at least fleeing the Twin Cities. Businesses are moving out of the metro area. They're moving out of the state because they simply can't afford it. And if you're looking at these large companies that are built in Minnesota, like Target, why would you continue to host your company here? So we'll see what happens. We're having a large brain drain in Minnesota, like a lot of Midwest states are, and I don't think this is going to help.
Talk to us about how, especially the Twin Cities, how the Somali criminal gangs and the Hmong criminal gangs play into all this whole debate.
I don't want to sound too pointing the finger at one cultural group, but it is a large portion of the Somali community that is involved in this fraud that we're seeing right now. I don't know if you saw the great news coming out of the Trump administration that over 2,000 additional ICE agents are coming into the state to really crack down on these immigration issues. So we're very thankful for the Trump administration and Kash Patel and the FBI coming in to help crack down on the rampant criminal activity that's happening in the state.
Yeah. Well, I'm anxious to see where this goes, and I hope that this has legs beyond just the issue itself, but really the larger question of how long should Minnesota and America at large be willing to fund these fertile fields for rife with fraud and corruption and graft. You know, I mean, I think that it takes a bureaucracy on top of the bureaucracy to monitor it. And at what point do we say, carve out the middleman here, the excess fat, and why don't we just make direct donations to our charity of choice? What a novel idea! Is that ever going to see the light of day?
I mean, we've seen that with President Trump when it comes to health care and cutting out PBMs.
Yeah.
What I think is really sad is these law-abiding daycares and people that are providing great services in Minnesota are getting their funding cut off when they're doing the good work and they're fighting the good fight and they're helping lower-income Minnesotans and families. And I think it's really sad that now it's affecting everybody because of this rampant fraud.
Yeah. Well, we thank you, Emily Novotny Chance, for being with us as the National Committee woman representing Minnesota on the RNC. I'm sure your voice will be heard loud and clear and echoing on and on and on all year. Now, I do have to ask you a final question before we let you go. You're so articulate, so well-informed, so just beautifully eloquent in the way you're exposing and expressing what's going on here. Can we assume that you did not go at any time in your life to the Leering Center?
I didn't. I missed that stop.
All right. Well, yeah, that's good. Okay, Emily didn't go to the Leering Center.
No Leering Center for me. No.
All right. Hey, thanks for being a good sport. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day and Happy New Year.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
So she didn't go to the Leering Center. I could have predicted that.
She went to a learning center.
Yeah, I think she went to the Learning Center.
Where she learned she didn't leer at people, she learned things.
All right. Well, to think that they've known about this for 7, 8 years, and it was just sort of hush hush because of the large pro-socialist bureaucracy and media. There's a complicit
political
media.
Fearfulness of getting, called to account by that voting bloc, and also don't want to be called racist.
That's right. Or xenophobe. Yeah. Well, Eric Schmidt's out there saying he's going to file some legislation for a mechanism by which you could denaturalize people.
Huh? 58% of the Somalian community in Minnesota is American-born. So that's a problem. I bet a lot of those are young. So
I don't know. I mean, I think that they should have really thought about this when we were having these, quote, refugees come in from Somalia. Remember Black Hawk Down and the carnage that went on there? These cultures, by nature, they are, if you get pulled over in a lot of these third world countries, you get pulled over, I hear, and it's reported, all you have to do is bribe the cop, right? So that's just...
You get pulled over just to be shaken down in
that's
some of these
part
places.
of their culture. And so to think that they're going to come to America and suddenly adopt America values and adapt to our way of life, I think that's folly. That's wishful thinking. That's putting on your rose-colored glasses. And we need to rethink our legal immigration and refugee policy, IMO. You didn't think I knew those kind of things, did you, Joe? All right. When we come back, it's the morning market report. Markets were going crazy yesterday with the Venezuelan issue and how that might return some money to oil companies that were nationalized back in the day, and the chances for expansion in oil. We'll see what's happening in about 5.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
Stephanie out today. She'll be back tomorrow. Jen Bukowski in for Stephanie. You hear her, of course, on Tuesdays with Gary and on her own program on Sunday mornings. We'll tag team the morning report. I said I'd give the numbers, and I knew what the numbers were, Jennifer. I stole the good news from you. I'm sorry. The numbers are great. The Dow reached record territory in light of the Venezuelan action over the weekend. I think with optimism about what might happen to energy and oil markets, and energy, when energy is good, prosperity grows. S&P 100, the Dow Jones was up 1.25%. S&P up about 0.2%, and NASDAQ up the same. And oil just ticked up a little bit, but oil's still at pretty low rates, about $58 a barrel. So things are looking good in the markets, and I think this new prospect of opening, what did you say earlier? Almost a third of the world's oil reserve, right?
Yeah, I need to check that if I'm going to keep saying that.
25% or 30%, I've seen, but a lot. What do the futures look like today? It looks like fairly flat right now. All the futures are just about a fraction of a percentage above. So little change, but that was a big day yesterday after the capture of Nicolas Maduro, who wished everyone a Happy New Year as he was being brought into the pokey.
They have 17% or close to
17. I've heard even higher, but
I have too. Yeah.
That's substantial. So what's driving the stories today? I think it's probably going to be more. As I think about it, Chevron was the only company still doing business in Venezuela, right? A lot of the other companies, when it was nationalized, a lot of their resources built on American, treasure and grit and intellectual property and hardware down there was nationalized when Hugo Chavez took over. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a reparations moment of sorts, and President Trump has talked about that.
He certainly has. Yeah, he said we're going to have our companies, they're going to invest billions and billions, and we're going to protect them, I guess, and protect those resources now. But when you see people being split along party lines about whether this was good to take Maduro out, I mean, what kind of contracts and insurance policies and everything else are you going to need as an oil company to go invest tens of billions of dollars to make these platforms to process this oil that's harder than regular oil, I'm learning, to process and make usable? You're going to need some assurances to do that, but it could really help the Venezuelan people and the American oil companies and the world writ large to have that be underway instead of how it has been.
I thought it was interesting that Fox News had a piece on, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where they looked at the history of Chevron, which was Gulf oil back in the day, and said they dated all the way back to the 1920s for their involvement in Venezuela.
So Chevron came from Gulf. What happened to Standard Oil? Were they?
I think now, I know ConocoPhillips is now talking about getting involved, and Exxon as well, right along with Chevron. But Chevron dates back 100 years.
Yeah. And then maybe Standard turned into Amoco. I'm not sure. But I'm glad to see us. Now, the other little quirk about this whole Venezuelan oil opportunity for the world and, U.S. oil producers, energy companies, is that's apparently not the best oil that's easily refined, right? It's heavy.
They call it sour crude.
Yeah, so it takes a lot more input, I guess, a
lot more refinery
to get it into stuff.
Yeah,
sort of like Drake. Takes a lot more refining to get him to where we need him to be as he grows up. I haven't had a chance to kid you for a few days, so I have to give you a little grief here.
Yeah, I knew you were going to have it built up. That's why I gave you your Christmas present today.
Oh, I walk in this morning, and he gives me this two envelopes, letter-size envelopes, folded on themselves. And I tear open the end of the envelope. You know what it is? It is a grab bag of stamps from all over the world. Beautiful stamps. Can't wait to go through them. That'll be. I can tell how excited you are, Jen. I was really excited. Thank you, Drake. Cool. That was very, very nice. Late Christmas present. I thought I might get a lump of coal from Drake, as much grief he takes. Hey, when we come back,
he might repatriate those stamps now.
Yesterday was a bad day for several coaches in the NFL. Let's talk about that when we come back.
Thanks for being with us. You know, in the wake of a really abysmal Kansas City Chiefs season and so many other teams in the NFL, but that happens every year. You know, there's always a handful of teams that just really tank. Some perennially tank. It was a bit of a surprise, I think, with the Chiefs. A cluster of firings yesterday. Well, there's 6 or 7. How many, Drake?
So there were 6 over the season, I believe, but there were 4 yesterday.
4 yesterday, 6 over the season. How does that rank in terms of the normal end of season total? Is that higher than normal?
I'd say it's about, it evens out because you'll have other years where there's not anyone, but there were a decent amount of firings that I didn't necessarily agree with, but also was happy to see.
So is Andy Reid? I mean, if Andy has another, what were they, 6-11, 6-12? What a terrible game that was against the Raiders. Oh, my gosh. If he were to have another bad season, the Chiefs, would he ever get fired or no? Is that off the table?
That's off the table, Randy.
Why?
He's won so many Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And the big thing I would worry about as if I was a Chiefs fan is if he retires, because the Chiefs are going through a mini rebuild right now. No one really sees them winning the Super Bowl next year and possibly the year after that. They're going to have to draft a bunch of good guys. Mm-hmm. And if it takes too long, Andy Reid's an old guy. If, he speculates that it's going to take too long, he might retire. That's what I would worry
Would he
about.
want to retire when they're down and out? Wouldn't he? Well, don't you want to retire on top?
Yeah, but, age is
kind of on top.
He may not be able to wait it out for another on top. Yeah.
These rebuilds, they have to go perfectly. I say 2 years for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
It could be done in 1. I don't know.
That seems pretty optimistic. Of course, they had a lot of injury. The injury thing, it really does affect a team, right?
Well, the big
questions about Kelsey, too, whether he's going to even be back next year.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
There's going to be a lot of changes to the Chiefs in the next coming years.
It's getting married this spring, right? Isn't it this spring?
I think it's June 13th.
Or early summer.
But, yeah, the Chiefs, I wouldn't worry about Andy Reid getting fired, per se.
Okay.
But there's one interesting little coach switch around. You're not allowed to trade coaches, but...
there's not a coach transfer portal?
Yeah, there's not a coach transfer portal yet.
Yeah.
But sometimes they do some trades, end around trades, yeah.
Yeah, the Browns coach got fired, if you believe that.
Wow.
It's not exactly his fault. They're the worst organization in football. But anyways, he has taken the spot of a coach that was fired.
Really?
Or at least he's in contract works with the Atlanta Falcons already.
That's a weird dynamic, right? So I guess that's just a vote from the Falcons for the man and disregarding his performance. They're not blaming the Browns' performance on him. It's about the organization.
Yeah, and the big thing, and we don't talk about this ever, is general managers. They get fired. Yeah. They're just as important as the coach. They do what a college coach does. We talk about that. A college coach does everything. The general manager is in charge of drafting, trading, making sure they have the players. And there's a lot that goes into how NFL organizations run their front office.
Who has most of the say over the hiring and firing of the coach, the GM or the owner?
The owner.
Huh. Wonder how many of these GMs agreed or disagreed. Well, they probably just saluted and say, yes, sir. Whatever you say, sir. If the owner says, out of.
I don't know.
Not the guy in Atlanta. They showed him the door right along with Coach.
Yeah, both of them left, yeah.
That's a big thing. In
you
my
could
opinion,
lose your general manager, right?
Yeah, I think that if you're going to fire your head coach, you got to fire your general manager. Because if you're going to get a good coach, you want to have a coach that has a reliable general manager that he works well with. And that's kind of an issue that you see in like New York and other places like that.
So that sounds somewhat similar to the, maybe not, to the AD and the football coach in college, except the AD is looking over several different programs, right? So there's a broader net that he or she has to cast.
Well, Randy, it'd be like if Peter came in here and said, Randy, you're fired. Yeah. I'm going to put in a random guy who's a big shot, and if I don't agree with him, the show's not going to be as great. So if he's going to fire you,
he'd have to fire you too?
Yeah.
Well, after all, yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. Sounds good. John's smiling.
There you go.
All right. So, hey, we have we're going to take some calls. And so let's see if we can. We have a guy that wants to call and talk about some things. I don't know. I just think that with the money that these guys make, I guess it's not unusual to expect, what did you do for me today or yesterday, right? Not what you did last year, the year before that. It's a fast sports cycle, and people want results. That's why I don't know. I maybe Drake's right. If Andy has another bad year and doesn't see greener pastures on the in the horizon for the team, he might just say, I'm out of here.
But isn't there also something to be said for people with staying power who can prove year after year that they can perform?
I
so
think,
even if you have an off year,
isn't that generally what most people who make a mistake and get made accountable for it? Don't they hope that their bosses would say, look at the body of my work, not one particular thing. But that's not really the American way. It's especially like with corporate earnings and investor meetings and stuff. It's like, what are the profits this quarter? What are the profits next quarter? I don't want to know what you're planning for. All right, does this say Ulysses? Caller Ulysses.
Yes, sir. Ulysses.
Hello, Ulysses. Thank you. What a great name. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I thank all of you there for being a voice for a lot of us who don't tend to come out of the shadows and say something. A lot of us are intimidated, meaning conservatives. So I wanted to comment, if possible, on all the violence that's happening here in Como, which is actually pretty sad to see, considering I brought my family over from Los Angeles, Inglewood, California, to be exact, because of things that I'm seeing now that's happening here.
So you fled Los Angeles. May I ask why you came to Columbia? Was it for job or school or both?
It was actually really quick. My wife, she signed me up for the PTA over at my kid's school while I was in Los Angeles. And once we got in there, we found out that the kids weren't taking trips like the prior 6 years that we were there. They didn't have any funding. They didn't have paper. They didn't have pencils. The teachers were stressed out. The kids were not learning.
So bad educational environment. Do you find it better in Columbia? Do your kids go to CPS?
Oh, heck yes. Way better.
Okay.
There's some little improvements, but I like the fact that here they do focus on recreation, like parks, and they have actually open bathrooms with toilet paper. Are you kidding me? That's the greatest thing here.
Wow.
The schools and the teachers, I've met a couple teachers, are amazing. There's a little thing, different things that we want to change.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, what about the criminality? I mean, you came from L.A., which is certainly no, birthday party environment.
Exactly. Well, remember, they raised the amount that people can steal over there just so they don't put people in jail, clog up their already horrible system. But over there, they create I'm going to say it the way it's supposed to be. Liberal policies destroy cities.
Yeah. But
no
yet
matter where you're at, you could be like Missouri is a great state, but then you go to the cities and what's happening there.
All right. So
this is have a chance.
So Ulysses gives a warning to the city fathers, to Barbara Buffalo, to the committee, to the council. Hey, don't go where L.A. went. And it just seems like this inexorable momentum towards city gets big, gets blue, and goes south in terms of public safety. I
appreciate about Ulysses, it sounds like he's going to vote right. And what I see a lot of California is like they ruin where they come from, and then like a crowd, a bunch of locusts go somewhere else and start voting blue there and ruining those other places. So at least he's not going to do that to us. And we appreciate
Ulysses
that.
is not going to take.
Look, you guys have a beautiful community here, and it's sad to see. The fact that they started spray painting those messages off of Scott, and across the street, you know exactly who lives there. And it's unfortunate that you have to point it out that way, but you have to call it what it is.
Yeah.
Last night, the chief of police, and I love my law enforcement people, believe me. Oh my God, these people go out there every day and deal with everybody else's crap, and then they have to deal with their own personal one and separate that. But yesterday, the chief of police last night on Como 8 said that police can't be everywhere. Okay, cool. But we have to be proactive. It's okay to stop and see like the cops are doing here. The cops need help. They need to do their job, period. And then the prosecutors have to prosecute these people. That shooting at the store is horrible. 17 years old. They're still breaking into cars around people who are hardworking individuals.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just infuriating, man. This is a beautiful community.
Well, okay, so Ulysses gives some really, I think, very prescient advice to people, decision makers in our community. Now, we have to ask you, you sound like, okay, so you're conservative. You're not going to turn Columbia bluer. You're gonna move it towards purple and then maybe red after that. Did you have any corporal punishment as a young man? Any swats on the butt or anything like that?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Exactly. And that was the other point. And I get what both of y'all are saying about the swatting, but it does help out.
Okay.
I mean, we all grew up, knowing right from wrong. There was no gray line.
All right.
No gray area.
Ulysses, welcome to Columbia, and thanks for being part of the Wake Up Missouri family. Hope that you'll stay in touch with us by text and phone and on our social media, on Wake Up Missouri YouTube channel and on Facebook as well. Thanks for being with us.
Definitely. Take care, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Well, that's a refreshing view, isn't it?
Yes.
And that reminds me of what I've heard among immigrants to this country, maybe first generation, generally from Europe and from Eastern Europe especially, who have escaped. Maybe they moved here shortly after the Berlin
You're saying you
Wall
moved
fell.
from L.A. and escaped communism.
Yeah, but and that's what I was going with. I think I've told the story before, but when we visited D.C. a few years ago, and we were lobbying for rural health care, and so we went to the Senate cafeteria. You get what is it, a bean soup for a nickel or 50 cents or whatever. And I remember at the checkout line, lady had a foreign accent, And I started talking to her. She says, I said, boy, this is so just magnificent to be here in the heart of democracy and everything. It was beautiful. And she says, you don't know what you have. Don't lose it. This was a lady at the checkout in the bowels of the Capitol warning us, don't lose what we have, because she had been other places and had seen what socialism, what despotism, what tyranny looks like. Words of warning from people who have been there and don't want us to do that. Let's come back and wrap it up on Wake Up Missouri with the leftovers. Stay tuned.
It's Wake Up Missouri.
Back into Wake Up Missouri. Hope you're getting back into the swing of things, into some structure in your life after the relatively unstructured holiday time. I think it's all a little bit of a work in progress as we get back into it. I'm Randy. There's Jen. She's in for Stephanie Bell. And now Stephanie will be back tomorrow, but you're with Gary here.
At 10:30, yep.
At 10:30. Gary follows our show. Mike Murphy is going to continue to be working, I know, on this story about the local violence, the shootings over the weekend, one in the Dick's Sporting Goods area, the other on northeast Columbia, that resulted in the death of one of the victims, and now that suspect's been, detained. So he'll be covering that and other great topics on Eagle Eye at 5. So Drive at 5. So make sure you stay tuned to all of the great programming on 93.9 The Eagle and KWTO and KWOS. Now, John, do you think DEI is dead?
Never say never that one. It may be backed off a ways, but it's I think it's still alive and well in many places.
Yeah, it isn't dead. And there's this story out of this guy who's suing the Knoxville Symphony. Take a listen to this.
My name's James Zimmerman. I'm a clarinet player. You may not have heard of me, but if you've been to Disney World or played video games or watched Netflix, you've heard my playing. I'm a session player in Nashville, and I also work in big tech. Before tech, I was principal clarinet of the Nashville Symphony for 12 years, but in 2020, I got canceled for resisting DEI. It's a long story, easy to Google if you feel like it. So last summer, I took the blind audition for principal clarinet of the Knoxville Symphony, practiced like a madman for 2 months, and won the audition unanimously. I was very pumped. Until 2 days later, when their CEO called to tell me, we heard some things about your time in the Nashville Symphony, and refused to give me the job, wouldn't communicate with me, and gave the job to my runner-up, an obvious DEI hire who's still in college.
Principal clarinetist for the National Symphony for 12 years, and he wins a blind audition. And then,
but to be fair, like the runner-up got second place in the blind audition, so how is she obviously a DEI hire?
Because she wasn't the most talented.
Yeah, but I don't know that you could say for sure she was DEI hire.
Well, she's a DEI hire because he got in trouble because of his resistance to DEI hiring at the National Symphony that he was with.
Yeah, not good. I love how they do blind auditions. Yeah. I love how they do blind grading in law school, because then it's merit-based. Mm-hmm. And then putting these DEI things, involving that kind of stuff, it just messes everything up. And then people lose faith that it's a meritocracy at all. And so it's so much better when everyone has won a blind audition or had blind grading or whatnot, because then you don't quibble with the results. And but I would say, like, okay, how is she an obvious DEI hire if she got, I don't know how many people that auditioned, but if she got second place, then I would not call her obvious DEI hire.
Yeah. Well, from his perspective, I mean, as a result of the DEI environment, you could say she was hired because of the DEI. It's not, I don't think it's denigrating
she
her.
Was, picked for her.
But still in college. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. But
now, is this.
But also, like, if maybe they should do their due diligence before he gets invited to play in a blind audition, or I don't know, did they invite people or did anyone get to go audition?
Yeah.
But I would say what if you find out they've got a criminal history or something like that? Just because they want a blind audition doesn't mean that everyone that works in the orchestra has to sit by the guy every day and play with him, right? Yeah. So, but this is a stupid reason to oust him.
They have a criminal history and they've served their time, then the slate's clean, right?
Yeah. Of stealing instruments and breaking them.
Now, and then Harmeet Dillon weighed in on this, right?
She says on it. After Jesus Osete flagged it. But they can't do everything. This guy's already suing, but still, it's kind of cool that they're kind of swinging around over there in D.C. and being like, "We're watching you."
On other news, are you going to be going to Hilton hotels very much? Did you see?
Maybe
there was an independent Hilton owner who said,
and it was their employees.
Yeah, and
they've been held to account.
Yeah. So they got into trouble by really holding their personal political beliefs against patrons. ICE, yeah. No, ICE. ICE cannot stay here, said one independent hotel. Hey, that wraps it up. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Randy.
All right. Stay tuned for Gary Nolan. We'll see you tomorrow.